In 1828, in Edinburgh, a dead body was worth more than most people earned in months. While coal miners worked 6 months to earn £10, body snatchers could make that in a single night. This wasn't grave robbing, this was an industry. And 2 Irish immigrants named William Burke and William Hare were about to turn it into something far more sinister. They discovered that instead of digging up the dead, it was easier to create them. Welcome to the story of Edinburgh's most notorious murderers, where medical science met cold-blooded killing and fresh corpses became the currency of progress. What they did wasn't just evil. For a terrifying period of time, it wasn't even illegal. To understand how 2 men became serial killers, you need to understand 1828 Edinburgh. The city's medical school was so successful they had built a 200-seat anatomy theater to accommodate students from across Europe. Edinburgh was the medical capital of the world. But there was a deadly problem. In 1826, medical schools needed between 1,100 and 1,200 bodies for dissection, but only 10 to 12 were legally available. Scottish law said bodies could only be used if they came from executed criminals, suicides, or orphans. This created a black market. Surgeon Astley Cooper testified that corpse prices had skyrocketed from 2 guineas to 8 guineas, sometimes reaching 14 guineas per body. To put that in perspective, silk weavers earned 5 shillings per week. Servants earned 1 guinea per month. A single corpse was worth months of honest labor. Body snatchers became the suppliers. They dug up fresh graves, stole corpses, and sold them to medical schools. The law had a bizarre loophole. Stealing the dead person's clothes was a felony. But stealing the actual body? Just a misdemeanor, because corpses weren't considered property. Burke and Hare were Irish immigrants who came to Scotland in 1818 to build the Union Canal. When that work ended, Burke became a cobbler, earning about £1 per week, while Hare ran a boarding house in Edinburgh's Westport. Everything changed in November 1827, when an old tenant named Donald died, owing Hare £4 in rent. Instead of accepting the loss, Hare had an idea. He and Burke removed Donald's body from its coffin and carried it to Dr. Robert Knox's medical school. Knox paid them £7 and 10 shillings, nearly double what Donald owed in rent. No questions asked, no paperwork, just cash. Burke and Hare realized they had found a gold mine. But waiting for people to die naturally was too slow. They decided to speed up the process. They developed a method called burking. First, get the victim drunk in one of Edinburgh's many taverns. Then, one man would lie across the victim's chest, while the other covered their nose and mouth until they suffocated. The method was diabolically clever. No knife wounds, no obvious trauma, no blood. To any doctor examining the body, it looked like the person had simply stopped breathing. Heart failure, natural causes. Dr. Knox was impressed with how fresh their bodies were. He paid between £8 and £10 per corpse, praising their excellent preservation methods. Over 10 months in 1828, Burke and Hare killed at least 16 people. They targeted the vulnerable, the poor, the drunk, people no one would miss. Fellow Irish immigrants were favorite victims because Burke and Hare could easily build trust with them. Mary Patterson was a young woman who Burke murdered after getting her drunk. Dr. Knox was so impressed with her corpse that he preserved it in whiskey for 3 months before dissection. When her body appeared in the anatomy theater, medical students recognized her. She had been serving them drinks in taverns just days before. One student even sketched her corpse before they began cutting. James Wilson, known as Daft Jamie, was a 19-year-old with learning difficulties and a deformed foot. Everyone in Edinburgh knew Jamie. He was harmless, friendly, the type who would help anyone who needed it. When his body appeared on Knox's dissection table, students immediately recognized his distinctive club foot. Knox realized he had a problem. Students were murmuring, pointing, asking questions. So Knox quickly cut off Jamie's head and deformed foot to destroy the identifying features. Class resumed, as if nothing had happened. Body after body, Burke and Hare perfected their system. They transported corpses through Edinburgh's streets in tea chests and barrels, disguised as merchants conducting normal business. In just 10 months, they earned over £400, a fortune that most working families wouldn't see in several years. Success made them careless. On Halloween night, 1828, they murdered Margaret Docherty, an Irish woman, and hid her body while other lodgers were staying in the house. Fellow lodgers Anne and James Gray became suspicious when Margaret suddenly disappeared. When they searched the room, they found her corpse and immediately contacted the police. The game was over. Burke and Hare were arrested, but the authorities faced a problem. They needed someone to testify to secure convictions. The prosecutor offered Hare full immunity in exchange for his testimony against Burke. Hare immediately accepted, confessing to all 16 murders to save himself. Loyalty meant nothing when facing the gallows. On January 28, 1829, William Burke was executed in front of over 25,000 spectators. But his punishment didn't end with death. Burke's sentence included public dissection. The man who had murdered 16 people to supply anatomy schools would become their final lesson. Burke's skeleton still hangs in Edinburgh's medical school today. Even more grotesque, they made a wallet from his tanned skin, which visitors can still see on display. Hare disappeared after testifying, rumored to have been blinded by an angry mob seeking revenge. Dr. Knox faced no legal consequences, but his reputation was destroyed. Students abandoned his classes, and his career collapsed. The Burke and Hare murders led directly to the Anatomy Act of 1832, giving medical schools legal access to donated bodies and effectively ending the resurrection trade. But this was just the beginning of murder for medical science. The London Burkers who followed made Burke and Hare look like amateurs, developing sophisticated networks that harvested specific body parts for different buyers. When they killed 14-year-old Carlo Ferrari, they discovered that some organs were worth more than gold. The age of the resurrection men was ending, but the age of organized body harvesting was just beginning. Medical progress would continue to demand its pound of flesh, literally. But that's a story for another time. If you want to hear more tales from history's darkest corners, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments which gruesome chapter you want uncovered next.